Oh, good. I'm happy to see you.
Welcome, Chris Evans Radio. We are back with Dr. Danny. Uh, I hope everyone enjoyed the ribcage episode. That was part one. We're gonna do a little bit of break on a ribcage. Come back to it next week because we had two good comments that we were planning to address. But I have had something come up with not only clients, and then I ran into it personally when I was training legs today. And I would just love to hear your feedback. I don't think you and I have ever talked about like neck alignment in detail. And is it that big of a deal? So let's start with what I consider like the most common fallacy is on a leg press, do you care where someone's neck and chin are when they're pressing, doing a leg press?
Yes and no. I'm going to say it depends on the leg press and it depends on the person.
Okay.
Someone who's wide versus someone who's narrow, I'm going to have a maybe slightly different approach with.
Okay.
This is one where, so when we think about neck position, we want to think a couple of things. We want to think pressure management. We want to think airway position because if we shove our head forward
Right.
versus head back, that's going to change airway
Right.
availability.
Yes.
And then obviously pressure management through the upper rib cage, neck, kind of all of that. So I use neck position more as like, I don't cue it so much as it's something that like tells me a little bit more about what's going on in the system. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Because to me, I think it feels really natural to want to shoot your head forward or like, tuck your chin down to your collarbone. It feels right until I purposely take my head back and then I'm like, oh no, that's like when I leg press or leggings. Like if I'm doing a killer set of leg extensions, when the pain sets in, I want to drive my chin into my collarbone so aggressively. And I don't know if that's like a way to like run away from pain or what it is, but
Hmm.
I caught myself doing that today because I did for quads today. The first thing I did was occluded leg extensions, like where it's 4 sets to failure. And by you get to the third round of that, and everything in your body is screaming. Uh,
Yeah.
So I call myself doing that, and I know like, and I think you're right. I think on certain leg press, it's really natural to want to lift your head up. Um, Especially for, did you ever get to use that like gigantic leg press at S4 at Elite?
We have one here at Destination too.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Does like your or Dave's head hang off the back of it? Or are you too
I
short for
can't remember.
Okay.
I'm probably too short.
Right.
I think, head position is one of those things where like when we change our head position, I think it's worth being like, okay, what is our body actually trying to accomplish with this?
Correct. Yes.
And
That's what I
then
would
we
love
can
to talk
kind of
about.
And then we kind of go about, okay, like, is there another way to do that?
Mhm.
Or do we not want to have it accomplish that and instead, adjust another part of the system? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
So something like a squat press versus like a 45 degree or a linear press, like the hammer strength that a lot of people are used to,
Yes.
in my mind are very different because of the strength profiles. And those strength profiles are when I talk about pressure management. If you think about the pelvis,
Mhm.
on the top of you here. When
Okay.
that weight comes down, there's a lot of basically pressure on like all of the muscles through the pelvis.
Okay.
So we breathe in and they need to do this. And then at the same time, we've got all the load from the leg press bearing down here.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
So we have basically a fight going on with our internal pressure management through the
Mhm.
pelvis and neck. And sometimes neck movement just reflects a little bit of what's going on with that. I
Gotcha.
think some people I think some people would say verbatim that neck position should always be like, back or open or like forward or whatever. And
Wow.
I think when you've been at this long enough, you realize that someone's body is going to like already live in a little bit different position and then put them on a machine and we can't impose a demand on them that like they wouldn't be able to unload it anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And make sure I'm grasping what you're saying here properly. So if you take an experienced lifter, you're much more inclined to just say, hey, do whatever feels best to you, or more
Uh,
natural, or no.
it depends on if they're injured. And it depends if they look like they're actually like able to target the muscle.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Because if their neck is all over the place, and it also looks like they're not actually putting weight on the muscle, they're just moving through it. Because like you've seen people like that. Like we've both seen people where like they load up a bunch of plates and like kind of sort of looks okay, but there's that like there's that intangible, like you can't quite put a word on it where you're like they're on it
Right. Yeah. Yes.
difference there.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of depends. And then obviously like if someone's working with me, I've got some other tricks where like if they want to go and do something kind of dumb in training, I have other ways to help kind of offload that. So I permit a little bit worse movement in training if people feel better,
Yeah.
knowing that like as coaches, we can always sprinkle in something in to just kind of offset some of that a little bit. But I think that what you touched on with like wanting to basically drive your chin down is interesting
Mhm.
because part of what that does is recruit kind of a whole line of muscles that starts up in your neck, down through your collarbone, so through your sternum, down to your lower rib cage, into your rectus
Okay.
abdominis.
Yeah.
So sometimes we end up kind of curling forward to try to find a little bit more bracing.
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, because like that's not even something that crosses my mind in say like a warm-up set. But like when I unrack anything 8 plates aside and north, that sensation it wants to be there.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
when I do like lay my head back on like there's a matrix leg press that I use that I love that the gym I went to today. But like if I go to Elite, which has an Icarian, like that pad hits my neck like right below my earlobes. So if I shoot
Yeah.
my head back, it almost feels like my neck is or my head is behind the pad. If that makes
Yeah.
there's no head support. Where if someone was say probably 5'6" and shorter, that's the back pad's going to be flush against the back of their head.
So that's the one I need. I'm just kidding.
That
So
that's
like, I
it's
don't
my
know.
least favorite leg press.
Next step to me is super confusing because there's so much relationship between our neck position and our autonomics too.
Okay, yeah.
Like you can wildly change your sympathetic drive by putting too much pressure on or taking too much pressure off suboccipitals. I mean, like when I think neck stuff, I'm not necessarily thinking like musculature as much as I'm thinking like what else is going on within um, the physiology of that system. Like, how much are we going to change autonomics? How much are we going to change someone's ability to actually get air, which is going to change their, ability to get oxygen to tissues, things like that, which is also going to change how sore someone might get if they can't buffer that, if their CO2 tolerance is high enough to actually matter. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, because
So
if
like I hear neck stuff and like there's probably a really simple answer that like, oh, just like put it in this position, but
you're
I don't know. I collect people who like I'm okay with them training less than perfectly because I want them to love their training.
yes.
More what I look at is like, okay, if they're gonna do that, what do I need to do as a coach to like account for those things? So someone who like ramps himself up and let's say they go into a lot of extension, forward head, includes a little blood supply to the brain stem, and their vagal tone gets jacked up. Well, then I want to make sure I'm putting something in their program to like address vagal tone. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know, but like, what did like, because I have my like nerdy thing, but like, what have you heard? What have you like? What do you cue? What do you use?
So for me, okay, when I'm speaking specifically for legs, like that's a different thought process than where I'd like to get into is some chest pressing with this because
Hmm.
I'm almost on different sides of the coin for legs versus upper body. With legs, to me, as long as you, because listen, we've all talked to people where they almost feel like they're having like a brain aneurysm because they have so much pressure built up in their head on a leg press. And
Yeah.
I know that like the common thing, people are like, oh, I burst a blood vessel in my head, and that's why I have a throbbing headache. And I'm like, is it really that? Let's be real. Now, on the flip
Yeah.
side of that, I think you and I have both trained hard enough to where you get a splitting headache, and that could be a matter of like, did we manage our breath properly? Did I push something crazy hard? And honestly, I don't even know what happens sometimes where, like I know I can think of a handful of times where that's happened. You have a splitting headache the rest of the session, and then it goes away over the course of the rest of the day. Um,
Mhm.
so with lower body for me, I think it like when I watch myself on film, if I shoot my head forward, I'm always like, God, fucker, push your head back. Like, and then I know if I like really think about it intelligently before my set, and I'm like, okay, I cue it, right? Like that's what I'm thinking about. 20 plus reps, head back. And like those are the only two things I'm gonna think about. Um,
Yeah.
like then I think when I watch myself do my sets and I have my head back, it looks better. But I don't know if that's just a matter of me thinking like, oh, neutral spine is the best way. Um, which is why that's why I posed you this question because I'm like, I always love to hear someone else's thought process. Because at the end of the day, I think you're right. Like if your head tilted forward, slightly forward, jacked forward as you press up feels better and you can get more reps, my initial thought is go with it, bro.
Yeah, I mean, it's always about the goal, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's this person's goal? It's kind of like if you're going to take a race car and like, test it on the track, you're probably going to break it a little bit. As long as you have the tools and the tech and the people available in your pit stop, it's probably okay because you can put it back together, right? I
Agreed.
think unfortunately the tough thing about Next is that like there's just a lot going on to where could you be getting a splitting headache from some of the hemodynamics? Absolutely. Could you be getting a splitting headache because quite frankly you just use those muscles and it's more of a tension headache? For
Right.
sure.
Right.
Could it be the fact that you have fluid between here and here that isn't moving as much, and so you're not getting the recoil, or you're getting too much?
Right.
Throw you off your Yeah, I mean, like it could be any of those things.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I don't know. I'm also like a terrible PT in this regard because I just want to train. Like there
Yeah.
are certainly like red flags we want to look for, right? But I think even practical things like if you and I got on the same leg press, I'd probably have to put my head forward because I might not be able to reach the handles otherwise. So creating that kind of depression is going to let me lock in better.
Right.
Um, so like there are lots of different things that people just don't think about.
Yeah.
Like there's the ideal world and then there's how we trade.
I mean, I think like if I think back to my early beginnings of squatting for football, right? Like we're always taught like pick a spot on the wall and it's got to be up, right? Like they
Oh
don't
God, we do this.
correct. And then I always remember thinking like that feels horrible. Like that doesn't feel natural to me at all. And then I always thought, oh, just stare yourself in the eyes and that feels great. So that's what I always did. And then you see people who are really good at squatting and they're almost staring at like the crease of where the walls meet of the floor and the
Yeah.
wall. And I guess that kind of leads me to believe, like, because our coaches would always tell us, your head is gonna, if you want the bar to go up, the head's got to lead it. So if you're looking up, the bar is going to go. Logically, you and I both know, like, you put enough plates on there, don't matter how high you look up, you're going to get buried in the ground.
I mean, it's going to go up, but it's going to go back is what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And I guess because even at a younger age, my traps were pretty well developed. Like when I look up, that makes all of this roll forward, and the bar didn't want to sit high on my trap like I like it to, which then threw my biomechanics off. But
Well, I think you bring up another really good point, and this is subtle, but like the next time you leg press,
mhm,
even just sitting here, if you look up with your eyes, you're going to feel a tone change in your suboccipitals and your cervical extensors,
yes,
versus if you look down, you're going to feel a tone change. You can feel a little bit different on the leg press if you change where your eyes are looking.
yes,
Um, Eyes are hugely important for autonomics. They also tell us there's kind of this like reflexive, I don't want to say like flow, but it's a Monday and words are hard. So there's this kind of like reflexive chain of events that happens with how we then manage load, how we then kind of base our center of mass and pressure management, even when we're, on a leg press. So one thing I've kind of been toying with lately is like when I've been on the squat press like consistently for probably like 2, 3 years now.
yep,
So it's been fun for me to kind of toy with like, where is my vision going? And how does that change how well I can actually load and lengthen muscles?
right.
So there's like other stuff that we can look at there too, right? And I think anytime I like someone says neck to me or thinks about cervical position, I'm not thinking so much about the musculoskeletal component. I'm thinking about like again, all the other like you open that door and there are a billion roads that you can go through.
So where
Um,
where do your eyes lead when you're on the squat press?
if I'm on the squat press,
Mhm.
I need to keep my head and neck neutral. I need to make sure I don't start crunching because if
Yeah.
I start crunching, I lose my pressure management.
Is that how
And
you have to rack it? Like when I use that, I think my arms are so short. When I rack a
Mhm.
squat press, I have to crunch forward and like round my upper back.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
If it gets heavy, like on my top sets, I have Dave help me rack and
Oh,
unrack because I'm too
oh,
short.
right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, but like that compared to something like my deadlift,
Mm.
I know my deadlift is going to be off and my sight line is off because that's going to change cervical position. And cervical position is going to tell us where to center. Like if anyone's listening or watching, like just look up and you're going to feel your center mass kind of shoot
Yes.
different movements.
When you do your deadlifts, do you prefer to have a mirror or you don't want that?
I never want a mirror when I train, unless I'm maybe for like shoulders, right? Or like arms, right?
I want mirrors if it's good lighting.
Yeah, right. Oh, but okay, but hold on, Chris. When have you ever not looked good in a mirror while training?
I think at Elite, I don't. At Elite, there's like the worst overhead like fluorescent lighting. I'm always like, Jesus Christ, I look like 123 pounds in here. Um,
I know. I did that tricep for chest that we did elite. I did that today.
yeah,
It
heck
was
yeah,
good.
yeah.
It was good stuff.
Mm. Nothing, I think, finishes a chest. session portion of the workout, getting into shoulders better than that. It's just good. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, it just feels incredible. Um, all right, let's see. Back to topic here. All right, so let's if we're th I think we kind of like really thoroughly talked through like legs and leg press. Now, the one place where I feel a little bit different on is, I know a lot of people like to raise their chin or press through with their head on a chest press. I always, and this may be again just personally the way I'm set up, is when I would do either flat bench, doesn't matter if it's flat, incline, decline, dumbbells or barbell, I always would drive pressure through the back of my head. So I would drive my head back into that pad. And I would always think like points of contact, right? I would think like, I want to keep my head on the bench. I want to keep my hips on the bench, and I want to keep my feet flat on the ground. And for me, like that's where I feel like I generated the most force and power. I realize not everyone may be that way, but when I would press, and if I knew I wanted to do it for strength, like that's how I would do it. And that's how I honestly have the best connection to my chest. Um,
Hmm.
so let's maybe talk about like, do you have any hunches of why that may be? Is it all personal, or is that the proper way to do it?
Well, do you, when you say your head back, are you like extension or retraction?
Retraction.
Both.
Yeah, a little bit of both. Yeah.
Um, for anyone, I think it's important to think about where you start in terms of like your spine position,
Okay.
just standing up. Like, what's your baseline spine position? You have such a tendency to be forward that for you to be able to actually open up, like get your chest to open, you probably need to reference back of you.
Yeah.
Most of us need to get behind us a lot more. I mean, you think about it
Right.
and like we do life in front of us. Our phones are in front of us, screens are in front of us, keyboards in
Right.
front of us. Pressing is in front of us. Like our nervous system is hyper attuned to everything in front of us.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that for you, like the points of contact make sense. Like you giving your body a reference center for like, where you're stabilized. And again, there's a lot that can happen with, I would say like the amount of musculature through the neck into the sternum and like first and second rib clavicle area.
Right.
If those are bound up, you're probably not going to get full length through your pec. So
Right.
it makes
Yeah.
just from a, just muscle length and like range of motion availability standpoint, that would make sense.
Yes.
I think I think with pressing, the tough thing is where your neck goes is probably going to determine like what happens to your chest wall.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah.
Is that kind of why you drive it back?
It just with that and it feel to me this is my like, meathead answer is it just feels good. Like I feel like I have and can present the most power and force. And with chess, like that's how I grew mine. And like
Yeah.
once I figured out the mind muscle connection with pressing with my chest, then I knew it was a matter of just seeing how much weight I could get on the bar for reps. And like that was something I was always good at. I was always strong, but I didn't have a chest developed. So once I connected mind muscle to it, I was like, okay, cool. Like now let's just take those reps north with heavier weight. And for me, like you said, I want to think about pinning everything back. And then so when I press up and through that, all of that shit is going to go this way away from me. Like
Yeah.
so it's almost like it's like competing like yin and yang almost, right? Like where I'm trying to shove my body this way and take my chest through and up.
Well, just to add kind of a layer there,
Yeah.
I love all that.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking live now. Let's see if I can put words to this. So, like, if we're going back to neck position as like kind of the topic of conversation,
Yeah.
driving it back without any extension, like whatever this does is going to determine what goes on here. We kind of talked about that. Being able to find a position where if you've got two balloons on the inside of your rib cage, those can fill,
Mm.
that's going to be what allows you to get the best connection and length and contraction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So when we're thinking about neck position, if the goal is to drive both stability and the ability to like get those balloons to expand inside our chest wall and inside our rib cage so that we can find full length on the muscle, I think finding that without weight is probably the hardest thing, but also really helpful. What I made the mistake of doing with the powerlifting background that I have is like I'd always just jam myself back. And
Oh.
so, I grew up being taught like just pin the gaps, pull everything back, lock everything down. And so all that did was like take all of this and just shut me forward. And so then I had to
Mm.
come back just triple chin that I just showed on the internet. Um, and that can put you in a position, obviously, where it, range is shorter depending on your goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in terms of like actually growing,
Yeah.
I think whatever you can do to kind of expand from the inside out
Yeah.
and maintain posterior contact and references.
Yes. Right. Because to me, it's like if I watch others in the gym around me, like training, I always would see like, I talked about points of contact to start because that was what made logical sense to me. I'd see people taking their head like off the bench, their hips come up like when they're transitioning like negative to positive, and then when shit gets hard, they go like what I call is like the acceleration leg, like where it's like boner leg, just straight up.
The acceleration, like
Like
for
what?
sure.
I'm always like, stop kicking goals, homie. Like put them fucking on the
On
ground.
sport.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think a lot of people when they press, Dave runs into this issue where on the eccentric, he starts to jut his head forward.
uh-huh.
And a lot of that is because his upper back is too tight.
Oh, right.
What you mentioned about like keeping basically locked in and back at you, there's an idea called a reference center.
Mm,
In certain continuing ed courses that I've taken, it basically talks about how when you give your body the opportunity to sense those things, it
mm.
kind of changes again, like the whole cascade of neuromuscular coordination and events that happens around that. And so
Okay.
something I use with my clients all the time is the idea of like reference centers. And you just do the same thing.
Right. Yes. And I mean,
Cool.
that goes back to like what you and I said. Like occasionally I'll have people like be a little bit more, say, free with their neck. When they're like say on a hammer strength piece. Like like that like the wide press you and I did at Dwayne's or
Hmm.
like the decline, right? Like I think
Hmm.
for some people as they come down, it's natural to want to go here with their head, like taking it to the camera, and then as they press back and through. And I'm fine if you want to get a little bit of like, I don't know if you want to call that like rhythm or, let it just your body move free in space. Which I'm a huge fan of
Yeah.
if that feels natural to you, you get a good connection with your chest and like you almost get like a rocking sensation. I'm good with that. But a lot of times if I'm thinking about like barbells, dumbbells, like I want in my mind to always think, how can I be the most stable without being like purposely tight? Like you want to
Yeah,
have some
like too
tightness.
locked in.
Yes, yeah. You don't want to be like,
Yeah.
I guess rigid is probably the better word, right? Like you don't want to be so just like you feel like you're stuck in super glue or probably I've never had a bent shirt on, but I'm assuming that's what it would fucking feel like. Where everything just feels like I can't do anything. I'm in a straight jacket.
Yeah. I mean,
So
there's a Goldilocks, right? Where like we want to be tight, we want to be stable, but we also want to permit movement because that's what we're trying to do.
right.
And if we only break it down, like if we get overly reductionist and thinking all we're doing is this, we really forget a lot of the joint movement that has to happen at the shoulders, at the elbows, at the neck, rib cage, things like that. So the more we look for like lots and lots of tension, we prohibit that natural kind of I keep doing this. Basically, the joints have to roll and spin and glide in each other. And the more tension we create through large superficial muscles, the less of that roll spin glide we're going to get, which generally means we're going to get less output through the actual muscle we're trying to train from a bodybuilding standpoint. So there really is like a Goldilocks, state.
That's this is off topic, but to correlate what you just said, yeah, I know, right? Um, that's why I think most people suck at dumbbell rows is they don't have flow and rhythm to the exercise. Like, yes, you have to be like tight through your abs. You don't want to be twisting at the spine, right? Like, you don't want to be hyperextending and twisting. But at the same time, like, you have to allow that lat to like swoop and open and then fully shut, like, what I call like shut the door of like fully contract, right?
Totally,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
I have a guy that I'm working with right now who basically like advising a lot of his training, doing some consulting with him. And he grew up training with Dusty. Like
Oh, heck yeah.
for like first many years he was training, so you know what that training style looks like:
Yes.
hard, heavy, rigid, everything.
Yeah.
And kind of what I've talked with him about is the idea of like allowing your body to, I've talked with you a little bit about relative motion versus orientation. Relative motion, just bones move on each other.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about, the flow.
Yeah.
In orientation is the whole thing starts to move like you're on a spigot.
Oh, yeah.
And I think in the bodybuilding world and in the rehab world, and as more and more people start talking, and the next people are talking about the rib cage now, just wait, the more people start talking about things, we're going to start hearing more about the idea of orientation relative motion.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bet money that people are going to say, oh, if all you do is orient, it's just going to jack you up. And the reality is that for a lot of us, in order to fully access the fascial lines that we want to develop,
Yeah.
like not just rigid, if we want that full 3D, just blasting awesome look, that requires a little bit of orienting the whole body to help recapture that length. I think that's kind of the flow that you're talking about too. It's like you'll move a little bit and that allows a little bit more of that ball and socket motion.
without a doubt. And I think the bad thing is most of the people preaching against what you and I are speaking on, they either don't work with enough people who have a ton of muscle, or they aren't big themselves and have never been, right? So they don't understand what it's like for tissue to have to move around other pieces of your body, right? Like,
Yeah.
when I say to someone, hey, like, I can't keep my elbow tucked to my side because my tricep runs into my lat, like, they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, watch. Like,
Yeah.
I can't go any lower. My hamstrings run into my calves. Well, why is that? Because they're fucking developed. Like,
Hey.
yeah, right. And I think a lot of times, like when we start to speak about those things, like, you know, like adding like a little bit of say like twist to the end of a lat pull down, or when you open up your back at the end of a row, you get a little twist in there. I'm okay with that because you're allowing that tissue to fully release and then fully shorten and contract. Um,
Yep.
where again, as someone who doesn't have as much muscle and probably has a lot more range of motion than someone like I do, like through the shoulder joint, by all means, you can do it 100% textbook and smash that muscle on an EMG.
Hmm.
But if they like took the blinders of that off and just watch someone big do it, and it's like, hey, I want you to watch the muscle, and that's something you and I bang on, right? Like,
Yeah.
just watch the muscle work, and you can see like a little side twist at the end of a pull down or a row, that muscle is fully cramped, you know.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think that there's one way that I kind of describe this to people too is if you can imagine like a sausage and we have the connective tissue that surrounds our muscles, right? If you can
yes,
imagine like a bunch of small sausages together, when those only move in one direction, we basically want those to explode. We want the
yeah,
sausage meat to blow through the casing. I'm talking, there are so many that's what she said jokes. I'm sitting here like, I'm not taking. But we basically want the sausage meat to kind of blow out through the casing.
yes.
Not really, because we want to keep the connective tissue intact. But like if we're thinking about like if that's the goal,
Mm.
that is very rarely going to happen by just staying in one linear plane. A lot of
Yep.
that is going to happen. We start to induce a little bit more of a twist on the system. And a lot of that is because our muscle fibers don't run straight linearly. I hate like, yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna hold my tongue is what I'm gonna do.
Well, I mean, if we're speaking about lat, right? I think a lot of times people forget the fact that it connects at our armpit and it connects to the spine, and it doesn't run in like a diagonal. Um,
Yes. We
what,
have so we again like we learned sliding filament theory, right? Like when we were in school, it was like, oh, actin-myosin, they just do this. There's now a molecule called Titin that they're looking a little bit more at with regards to like the three-dimensional structure of a muscle. And what Titin does is kind of provide a little bit more structure to find there's basically our muscles run a little bit more of a helix than just like
yes,
this straight line that we're taught to do. I'm
right,
not talking macroscopically, I'm talking like the actual like, fiber
right.
is in nature.
Yes.
And I think when we start to appreciate that, then we can go, oh, maybe it's okay if I like, change my orientation a little bit if it's going to drive more length on the muscle.
Right. And I
So,
mean, where I think about that specifically is like say a bicep curl, where
yeah.
if I'm on a preacher bench with a single arm dumbbell, right, that feels a lot better to me than if you made me grab a close, easy bar and I'm like this. We're like, okay, now I can position myself, and then it's literally wrist to shoulder in a straight line, like
And it's probably better if you turn, right?
100%. Yep. And it just drills that muscle and it lines everything like shoulder, elbow, wrist, and it's like, oh, now I can curl the 50 and it doesn't feel like something's gonna rip. Um,
Yeah.
again, that like I think the most perfect example of that is the plate loaded hammer strength bicep curl with the preacher curl.
Hmm?
I cannot get on that with double arms if you paid me enough money. Like it
Yeah.
just feels terrible. It's too close. Like the handles are like maybe this wide.
I know. It's like the one of the few things that's built for someone my size. And yet,
Yes.
the straight curve on it is so terrible that I can't use it.
Yeah, right. Right. And what's funny is I remember being young in bodybuilding and I loved that machine. And I'm like, why don't none of the big guys use this? Well, now that I'm big, I understand it. You don't fit.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I was surprised to use the Cybex row the other day, the one that we were like, you too big for.
That will just be being a meathead and wanting to pull something heavy. Um,
Okay.
it was
So,
a good because the bad thing I like Elite because they have the DY row, but he doesn't have any like good dual arm rowing pieces that are chest supported. So I either have to do a like an incline dumbbell row if I want to mimic that and get like better alignment. And then the DY row never feels great to me 2 arms at a time, which is why I always
Mhm.
do it with 1 arm. So
Yeah.
again, like I always think about the gyms that I go to and like what I use. And when I'm thinking about like back for there, like I'm always going to do pull downs. I'm always going to do dumbbell rows because they have dumbbells up to 180s. And then the DY is there. So yeah,
Yeah. DIY row is probably one of my favorite pieces.
agreed.
That
It,
was like one of the first pieces I really learned how to feel my lat on.
yes. Yeah. And the great thing about it is, you can position your hip to where it lines up. The handle is super like semi-supinated, so not fully. Um, and then like again, the chest pad's just good. The strength profile on it is very good. Like that one, and I actually really like the hammer strength isolateral row, like the original, like the one that's a seat, looks like a seat. It's got the
Hmm.
handles to go
Yeah, yeah.
here and up and around.
Okay.
And that always felt good to me. I love that standing, if I'm being honest. Like that feels really good standing.
Are we thinking about the same piece? It's got a neutral grip and it also has a pronated
Yeah,
glute
it's
loading.
got the handle that goes here and down, and it's got the handle that goes up and around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's at the chest
Doing
pad.
that, doing that step back style with a clothy handle is bomb.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. And you know what's really interesting is that piece is where I forced myself during COVID to learn how to do a pronated grip row and open my back up. Because I
Hmm.
didn't have a lot of options because the gym I was training at didn't have heavy dumbbells. So I
Hmm.
would get on there with an overhand grip, like put the butt of my hand all the way to the outside on the pronated section, and I'd make my back like what I envisioned at least was like opening up and then fully shutting. Um,
Yeah.
that's how I learned on that one. So yeah.
It's been a long time since I've done a pronated, like truly pronated row.
Yeah, because you don't really need it. Your upper back and rear, well, maybe they regain some new tissue.
I was gonna say I could use it now. It was wild having all the pros in town over the weekend for the gasp event. I was like, my God, I've gotten so small. But we'll come back.
Yeah. I mean, that's the good and bad thing about when you hang out with those like truly genetic freaks is it makes you realize how much muscle you actually need to have and then how crazy genetics actually can be
Yeah, for sure.
when you
It's
apply
wild
it to
too,
the world.
because Dave is big. I mean, he's like 302, 303 right now. He's still got glute lines, full set of abs. Like he's a height 303.
Yeah,
And like even seeing him next to some of these guys, it's like, wow.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Pretty cool though.
yeah. That's what I would always, whenever I hung around John, I'd always realize like how much thickness is needed front to back. That
Yeah.
it's and it's because you can't see that in like a 2D Instagram photo or even video. Like, but those men and honestly women at the top level, like the thickness of their like collarbone to rear delt is it's hard to describe.
Yeah. 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 It's really interesting to see. It's super cool.
Like and again, speaking of rib cage and things, like something that I always pay attention to is like how much meat like hangs off of the rib cage and hangs
Like
off of
on the
the,
side.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can grab like a handful of lat under the arm. Like it's like
Yeah. It's crazy. It's fun working on them and like needling them because I mean it's like a heyday. It's hard because some of them like I worked on two bigger names over the weekend. They have very different tissue quality. And the
oh,
tissue quality means I did very different things with them from a dry needling and like tissue management perspective. It's
right.
just super interesting to think about. Yeah, super interesting.
Yeah.
But
Excellent. Well, guys and girls, thank you for watching. Next position. That was a little bit. If you have any questions regarding it, we're happy to answer it. If not, next week we will get into part two of rib cage and answer both the listener questions we had that were really good. So I didn't want to go too much rib cage back to back in case people's attention span is short on that.
and drop us more questions too, because
Agreed. Yep.
yeah,
What I'll do is maybe before the next episode, I'll put like a Q&A and I'll tag you in it so that way people can send us questions on my Instagram.
yeah,
And then that way we can field some questions within the episode in addition to talking about answering those two other questions about ribcage we had. So
love it. That
I
sounds
will
good.
post that probably Saturday, Sunday, somewhere in there, and then I'll just field those for you. So until next time, Chris, Danny, we're done.